Now, we're going to get into something really heavy right here, the heaviest part of the show, because Dave is going to say something out loud. I like the fact that unlike his own podcast, he's being interviewed here and being asked a question and trying to explain himself to other human beings present caused him to open his soul and reveal something a little bit here. He reveals the name of the game that the Mises Caucus was playing.
Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. Today, we're going to watch Jim politic as gracefully as possible. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, right, Jim?
That's right. I try to fight for ideas, not people. I tend to blame incentive structures and reactions more than I do human beings. That's a pattern. My stuff was fed through an AI by a friend, and it came back saying stuff like this. So I'm very focused on incentives. I don't blame individuals for the circumstances that they're in.
No, hey, that breaks with everything. We have to blame individuals.
Yes, we do.
Otherwise, we've got no government.
Exactly. Yeah, without gossip, there would be no politics. I've informed people. It's absolutely inherent to the system.
Yep.
So on that note, we're going to be focused on Dave Smith today. Everybody knows this. They clicked on the thumbnail and they saw the title of the show and they came in and they knew that we're talking about something Dave Smith said.
Yep.
And it's more about what Dave Smith has said than it is about Dave Smith, because I like Dave Smith. I think that what he does on foreign policy on balance is really, really good. But he recently appeared on the Liam McCollum show. This was 3 shows coming together. Liam McCollum, Human Reaction, and Dave Smith, Part of the Problem. And then on top of that, right before recording this episode, he did another episode himself where the third segment of the show, the whole show, Part of the Problem, focused on the Libertarian Party and what had just happened at convention, which I happened to be in attendance at. So I want to use this opportunity today to address, we're going to go get clips. Bill's curated some clips for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about those clips throughout the show, things that Dave Smith actually said. I am not anti-Dave Smith. I am anti what Dave Smith said. In fact, Bill, he said he has said he's not looking for new enemies. If you watch the entire segment, he says this many times. And I completely understand. I'm not looking for new enemies either. And I find the friend-enemy exhaustion, it just tires me.
It's troublesome.
We talk about lemonade around here, right?
Sure. Yeah, let's sit down with people we don't particularly like and find out what's going on with them. What are they thinking?
What's your deal? What motivates what you do? What I have noticed is already I have offended some people.
No.
And instead of the welcoming nature of healing repentance, there are people who greatly prefer, and I think this is the default position in humanity, to nurse a grudge and throw everyone in that pot of people we have a grudge against if they're not on the team.
Well, repentance is hard. It makes sense. And, I get that.
So quick story. In my reckless youth, I was a college Republican. Some people did other things with their time. I was a college Republican. And I was trying to help the George Bush campaign. This is 1988. And without going into all the details of the story, there's a flashpoint moment in the story where even though I had done everything that had been blessed and approved by the chair of our college Republicans in a particular contentious matter that had happened on our campus, tempests and teapots and all that, someone else had done something, and it was much more bombastic and far less effective. And we ended up in a hallway dispute. I'm not a very big guy. This guy was ROTC. I probably was not going to win a fight if one had come to that. But we came to blows. We didn't actually start physically hitting each other, but voices were elevated. And I was told after that was over that my problem was that I was not a team player. And I'm 20 years old at this moment, and it had a forever impact on me. Like forever. To this very hour, it has formed, that moment has had a lot to do with who I turned out to be. Being a team player is not my number one goal. What my number one goal is to follow virtue and principle as best as I can, and to try to understand the world in a reasonable sense. So we did, by the way, Bill, a video on Dave before episode 130. It's got kind of a rhyming title, right?
Yeah, that was on immigration, I think.
Yes, we called it "Wish Dave Smith Was a Libertarian on Immigration."
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about why Dave Smith wishes he wasn't a libertarian.
In any sense.
Well, especially the party sense.
Especially the party sense. Okay, so I wanted to clarify that because lots of people have libertarian aspirations, but becoming a member of a party kind of locks you in. And some of those aspirations, as you know, go by the wayside of the interest of the party.
So let's call it capital L.
Capital L. Okay, the madness of mobs. I've heard you talk about mobs before, and you're no fan, of course.
No. And I actually think that human beings are basically decent most of the time, in most situations, when they're individuals. I tend to think that they are not as decent and more prone to doing evil when they're in a mob. And a caucus, a political caucus, as we're going to cover, is a mob. It's a mob of people who give each other permission to behave badly, just like they do out in a street riot. What I notice is that there are ideas, and ideas have like an animating power to them. And if you approach things from a more Christianity-oriented lens, the way that you would actually interpret this is you would see these ideas as being spirits, attempting to find bodies to become a part of, so that they have hands and feet and mouths and other additional creativity to get things done.
I see where you're going there. So there's sort of like this avatar-ish energy.
Yes. Okay. But they can't do anything unless they can get that control, and they can do the most damage in a mob. So what that means is that there are people who are kind of leaders or troublemakers involved in this, and then inevitably the bootleggers in the question get joined by the Baptists. You get joined by good people who want to do.
You're throwing some terms there, man, but I understand what you're saying. So
okay.
The tiny little incentivizers of the mob are able to pull everybody along in the moment.
Exactly. And by the way, on both sides, they start to create a division, which we're going to get to in a second. But
sure.
I want to say, because I had a conversation at this event, and if the individual who's watching will know exactly who he was when this moment happened. It was a private conversation with a prominent libertarian. And I said that there are good people in the Mises Caucus, which is an idea that he fundamentally rejects.
That cannot categorically work anywhere.
No, but this is how this group grudge thinking works, right? And there's the animating spirit of divisions of mobs.
So the grudge has already taken place.
Yeah, and I think of very specific people as I say this. So I think of Michael M. and Stephen M. Stephen said out loud that he went to the 2022 Reno Reset, which we'll get into a little bit later, but he was at the 2022 Libertarian Convention. These people kind of became disinterested in continuing. They kind of got on the bandwagon. And some of the reasons they got there were reasons I could relate to. They were very opposed to how the government was handling COVID, for example, just amongst other things, okay?
Yeah.
And there was a lack of response from the people who were more on the cosmopolitan side, so to speak, of the party. Some of them were actually very much participating in believing and following along and wanting to be good citizens in the very cosmopolitan sense during that pandemic.
Sure.
There's other people that have that I know of, who've repented of involvement in the Mises Caucus. One of them is Jonathan M. Another is Stephen N. I'm not giving their full names. Some people will know who I'm talking about. But they were involved at one point, but said, oh, wait a minute, I didn't realize it was going to go here. And they have come to oppose it. Another one that's really interesting, and this is the only last name I'm going to give, I've appeared on his show, is Jacob Winograd. Jacob Winograd has been very, very, very open about his affiliation with these people, his desire to have the same outcomes they were seeking, and he was the very first person. I mean, it was February of the first year of Trump's administration where he started to say, this is no good. I consider these good men. The people I've just identified as good men, and I believe there's a lot of them in the Mises caucus. So I'm not looking to create new enemies here amongst them either, although we're going to talk about some things that are pretty sad and difficult to deal with.
Rene Girard, white courtesy telephone, please. Rene Girard, white courtesy telephone.
Can we put a graphic up on the screen that we've used before?
Oh, yes. Here we go. This is actually a really good one.
Rene Girard, and by the way, you've improved this. I appreciate this. We're going to hit this real quick. We've done a whole episode. It's episode 88. That's the most important episode in the history of Gracearchy. It explains Rene Girard, his philosophy. But there's the first part of this, what's called mimetic rivalry. So it is triangular in nature. You are imitating the desires of a model. That person has an object that they desire, so you desire it too.
Golden apple. Yeah.
Right. So you desire it too. As you get closer and closer along these two lines, as you get closer to the object, each one of you, you also become more and more deeper rivals of one another. And you come to see the mediator who is showing you this is the model you should imitate. This is mimesis or imitation. You come to view the model as a rival who gets in the way of your ability to have the thing.
Even though you both want it, the same thing.
Yes. So this plays heavily in political party dynamics. There are people who wish they were other people all the time, wish they had what other people had all the time, are willing to fight those other people fiercely all the time. It's a microcosm. And one of the ironies of this entire situation is as they get closer and closer to the object and become greater and greater rivals to one another, and the conflict intensifies, two things are simultaneously true. One, they will tell you that the difference between each other is vast and great and huge and big and enormous.
Even though it's getting closer all the time.
Exactly. And everyone else on the outside goes, wow, these two people are an awful lot alike. So these two people that are in the contest, they're literally blinded by their envy. Now, with that as the setup, can we go to clip F, please? This is Dave Smith, again, on a podcast with Liam McCullum.
We've got to find the clarion call to action and what exactly that is. Like, it was easy when it was like, hey, Nick Sarwark runs the party. He's trashing Ron Paul. We're going to take it over. I'm going to run for president, and we're going to make this big, huge moment. And like, that was a specific call to action that people could get on board with. And we got to find out what that could potentially be. And that's got to, I think at this point, be attached to a very direct plan of action. Like, we're going to do this to do this thing.
So I'm not going to get into all the sort of details of the past, but I'm going to mention one name there, Nick Sarwark. Okay. Yeah. We don't have time to go down a whole trail as to what the history of this rivalry was, but I will tell you, Nick Sarwark is there at the beginning or at the foundation moment. He's there. And a rivalry ensues between Nick Sarwark and the leaders of what would become the Mises caucus. Okay. And the fact that they could personalize, that they could focus on human beings as their enemies, as their models and enemies, meant that this could become a very intense, very angered civil war. Nick Sarwark was being very specifically critical in some pretty hard ways about Ron Paul. So they set up a caucus, and the caucus already existed at about the same time it starts, but this throws flame on the fire and intensifies the rivalry. And we know Rene Girard told us that this is how it's going to work.
So the answer there is to stay with it until there's what? What's the outcome if you stay with the rivalry, Jim?
Well, it's going to get worse, and it's going to it could even cause murder. Now, obviously, that's like the ultimate or epitome, like real war, but it could also destroy the host. And a lot of what I want to talk about today is the Libertarian Party, because this was very destructive.
And the party is the host.
Yeah.
The track record of Dave the Dropout.
Okay, I am not being harsh here. I promise you. He has fully confessed to being the dropout. He was supposed to run for president. Now, I want to revisit for a moment something I started to say in the first segment, and that is that I like Dave Smith's work. But there's a moment in this exchange that we're not going to play a clip of where he laments that Libertarian Party members don't watch him in his podcast. I do. He stands up to the pro-war advocates. He fights the propaganda that comes out of the large regime media and provides a balance. The podcast sphere provides a balance, and he is a major part of that now. And I was with him especially during a moment in his recent career as a spokesman, an anti-war spokesman, where he hadn't been there. And he knows exactly what I'm talking about if he watches this, and so do most of his fans. Dave made 5 decisions in 2024, maybe even start back in 2023, that are, and into 2025, that are historically important and demonstrate that he's nearly the last guy that should be asked what the title of Liam McCollum's show said. This was the title of the episode. Why can't the LP get it right? Dave Smith explains. These 3 shows that came together and branded this segment that was about a half hour long, why can't the LP get it right? This was a comedy act. And Dave Smith should know because he's a professional comedian. That's how he makes his living. He's done pretty well. This is a comedy act. And let me tell you what the 5 were. First, Dave was supposed to, as a core part of the Mises Caucus plan, run for president. But he dropped out. Dave the Dropout. So then they started scrambling to see if they could find somebody to take his place. The end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024 is spent on that, and they settle on a guy named Michael Rechtenwald. Now, Michael Rechtenwald had no public profile of which to speak of that would have kind of said to you, screamed to you, hey, here's the guy we should be asking to run for president. And he had a meltdown at the convention, almost literally. But Dave had endorsed him. And then Rechtenwald loses. Chase Oliver gets the nomination instead. So the third step, which has hardly been discussed, I have not seen anybody discuss what I'm about to say to you now. Dave very likely was involved in sandbagging and permanently hobbling Chase Oliver's campaign. So, Bill, let me tell you how it was done. It's a 2-step operation. First, you put out information, you leak it to somebody else who then reveals it. Dick Cheney did this during the Iraq War. We've talked about it on this show.
Yep.
And then he went on Meet the Press because he had an aide leak information to the New York Times. The New York Times subsequently printed it. And then he went on Meet the Press and quoted the New York Times. Dave appears to have, I cannot prove it, but he appears to have, it's circumstantially true, done the same thing. Tim Pool, Jimmy Dore, and Dave Smith appearing on Breaking Points all showed the same picture of Chase Oliver, who happens to be a homosexual man, at a gay pride parade with some gay attire, colored rainbow attire, and a rainbow flag. And they said, this is the nominee of the Libertarian Party, and all he cares about is gay issues and transing kids. And that followed Chase for the entire campaign. It was unfair. And to this very day, most people believe that's what Chase's campaign was about, because in the early hours of the campaign, this is what was put out. What do Tim Pool, Jimmy Dore, and Breaking Points have in common? Well, they're all friends of Dave Smith, who've had him on their show repeatedly. Fourth, Dave Smith endorses Donald Trump as the anti-war president.
You got that one right.
Except now he has to oppose him.
Yep.
That didn't work out so well.
Didn't work out so well, Dave.
Let's review. Did I say 5? I think maybe there's only 4 that I'm going to cover here today in the interest of time. Dave drops out after promising to run. Dave endorses Michael Rechtenwald. We'll have more to say about him in a bit. Dave likely permanently hobbled Chase Oliver's campaign right out the gate. And then he endorsed Donald Trump as the anti-war candidate president, not the Libertarian Party. So I'm not attacking. I want to be clear. I am not attacking anybody here. I'm inviting accountability first and hopefully repentance of the act. I'd love to see him admit that this is the role he played. I really would. I don't know if he's going to, but there is the beginning of a repentance, and it kind of excites me. So we're going to run 2 clips right now. This is from the same interview with Liam McCollum. Let's run clip D first. This is about Michael Rechtenwald.
It was an absolute failure of mine, a failure of character to endorse Michael Rechtenwald. I mean, that was just, I just absolutely shouldn't have done that. I totally regret that substantially more than I regret endorsing Donald Trump. I regret endorsing Michael Rechtenwald. I mean, that guy was horrible, and I knew it at the time.
So listen, you cannot get a more unqualified statement of repentance than that. That is like you're saying it's entirely on me. I'm the guy that was wrong. I went against my own values. So I get excited about this. And part of the reason he might be saying this, there's the reason he should be saying this, is that Michael Rechtenwald went borderline Nazi after he didn't get the nomination. He started issuing a series of very anti-Semitic public statements. It was horrifying. And to think that that guy got, that close, because he was basically the next runner-up to being the nominee of the Libertarian Party. Nobody really knew this or understood this, I don't believe, beforehand, but they definitely knew and understood this after he didn't get the nomination. He was very bitter and angry. Okay, Rechtenwald was a wreck. Now, clip E, if we could run it.
He was terrible. I shouldn't have supported him. I'm glad Chase Oliver won the nomination rather than him, because I'm actually scared of what that could have meant if he won it and we were kind of attached to it and he had embarrassed us the way he did.
This is, to me, the kind of confession that you would hope for. I think it's a positive step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a pre-repentance kind of confession.
Dave has been willing to take responsibility for a couple of things, including getting out of the race and leaving the Mises caucus hanging.
Honor, respect, right?
Right. So I respect when someone steps up and says, you know what, I could have done better. That's amazing. That's amazing.
The locust that ate the party. Where do you come up with this stuff, man?
It's a fun title. We're going to talk about what happened because the Libertarian Party shrank, and it shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And I've not said a lot on this show. I have said some things, but not a lot. And I'm not going to say a lot today either on my role in relationship to something called Project Archimedes. Someday, I hope to sit down and lay the whole thing out in really great detail. I had an opportunity at the convention to speak to something called Torch Club, which were the larger donors to the Libertarian Party, private suite meeting. I was the speaker there, and I did share a good chunk, not all of, but a good chunk of the story there. Project Archimedes, real simply, was a strategy. And it's been confused for being a tactic. It's been confused for a bunch of things. It's been disparaged at various times. And the worst part of it all is that it's been ignored for more than a quarter century. In 1999, the Libertarian Party achieved its highest level of party membership, which was about 33,000. And in 2000, the year after, the money followed, and it achieved its peak record of money. Now, what bothers me, Bill, about this is that A, it hasn't been broken since, and B, when I tell you it hit the peak record of money, that's in real dollars. We've had 26 years of inflation since then.
Yeah.
So they have never, ever come back to that level. And several of the chairs along the way, including one in particular calling this a mail order party, said that's what the recruitment process was, have disparaged this rather than actually adapt it. And there's all kinds of other strategies. There's the perennial local strategy where you got to help out the locals and run more local races and yada, yada. It's all bull. First comes the members. And after the members starts to come the money. And with more members comes more candidates and better candidates. Like everybody knows, this is so obvious. If you have a triple A school and then you have a single A school competing in sports, right? A high school. Which school is probably going to win the ball game?
Right. Right.
Okay. And so the more people that you have in the party, the more candidates you have, the better candidates you have. The more affiliates you have, the better affiliates you have. The more money you have, the more big donors you have. And it just keeps going like this. The more campaign volunteers and on it goes. With the membership comes everything else that you want, but every other strategy has been focused on and tried instead. And sometimes 8 and 10 strategies at a time so that they can't focus on anything. So we just had an episode that we did with Steve Nicali and Paul Dar, the now recent former chair and vice chair. And we talked a little bit there about how they called me. And that led to Perry Willis bringing back, he was the architect of Project Archimedes, bringing back a new and improved version of it called the Parity Project, which says that we want to get so big that we can do one other thing that's really, really super important. We can compete in terms of the level of coverage that we get. We are getting so much coverage that they can't ignore us. They cannot ignore us. We are at the table. And that is going to happen before elections do. Before we start electing people at the federal level, that's what's going to happen. I had a relationship. I know Angela McCardle a bit, and we've interacted by text, in person, and in phone. But I got to know Michael Heiss and had long conversations with him. And he was the guy that founded the Mises Caucus. He's the founder of it. He's the architect of it. He's the brainchild of it. And right up until the Reno reset, he is the prime mover of this whole thing. It's his strategy. It's his organization. It's him pulling people together to make this happen. And he said to me, I want to make Archimedes a reality. So he brought me on the Mises podcast. They had a podcast for their caucus. And I was a guest for a whole night where I talked about the history of this stuff. And they honored Harry Brown, who I worked for. And they talked about how important this was. But unfortunately, even though they managed to take the party over in 2022, lock, stock, and barrel, the Reno reset, it's called, because the convention was in Reno and they elected all 17 members of the LNC. I believe it was 17. All 17 were Mises. Nothing like this had ever happened before. And despite having that lock, stock, and barrel, they never actually followed through and launched a membership recruitment program. So I have been selling the same program and willing to promote it to whoever will listen. And finally, Stephen Nicali and Paul Dar have listened. And finally, now Evan McMahon, the new chair, has committed to not only getting to 33,000, but to 66,000 by the next presidential nominating convention. Go ahead.
I'd love you to talk about the Parity Project a little bit more, because people who have been there understand Archimedes. But if you have a moment and could throw in some parity kind of conversation just to give us a set on it, that would be great.
So Parity Project is very similar to Archimedes. The idea is that you start with membership. Everything starts with membership. So the number one strategy is to grow the membership. You do things to grow the membership. And all the other things that you want, well, no, wait. The second thing you do is you grow the membership. And then when you get down to the tertiary details, you start getting the other things that you want. Okay. But you start with membership first. You start with membership second. And it's I compare it to the real estate rule, location, location, location.
Right.
It's
yes.
membership, and then all these things shall be added onto you.
Yeah.
Okay. And parity means that we are competitive. We are on the same level. We have achieved that position. Now, I don't think we're going to need as many members to do it. I don't think we're going to need as much money as we're going to do it. But I do believe the media parity will arrive before the electoral parity. In fact, I think the last indicator or outcome, and this is very, very important. This makes me different from several other people. The very last indicator of our success will be the ballot box. The very last indicator will be victories at that point. That's the very last indicator. So that's the Parity Project. Now, Here comes Dave. And he has something to say about what actually happened. This is his version of the history of the Mises Caucus and the Reno reset. I want clip A, if we could, please.
Position that I'm in is that, look, I already led this takeover and we did it and we took the whole thing over and then it led to nothing. And so I can't kind of go back to the well and go, guys, we're taking the party over again, but this time we mean it. Unless there's like a clear plan of what we're going to do with it. You know what I mean?
So Dave goes on from this point, and I'm going to have something more to say about this, but let's pause for a second and focus on what he just did say. He talks about the Reno reset. He talks about how he led the takeover. Okay, that's just not true. In fact, he's the guy that dropped out. It was Michael Heiss's plan, and it wasn't followed through. This is something he's confessed to on other occasions, including this episode. He references it. He was not the leader, but he's now claiming leadership of this entire thing. He was an important figure. I would argue he's one of the 3 most important figures in this whole thing, or 4, perhaps, I don't know, but he wasn't the leader. Michael Heiss was coming into that Reno reset. They did take over the party. They got all the positions on the committee. Did they not have a plan? And before I get to how their plan worked out, can I just say, takeover? 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 Is this something you do with something you love? Like, I don't know. Do you try to take over a family? Do you try to take over a friendship? Do you try to take over a church or a cause you believe in? Do you try to take over? It's strong language. It's the language they mean, and it includes exclusion, because the takeover, as Dave makes abundantly clear in this interview and elsewhere, as Michael Heiss even makes clear, includes excluding some people. And this civil war started when Nick Sarwark was saying, we want to exclude some people. It's this language of exclusion. This is not graceful. This is not good. This is not virtuous. This does not lead to the health of the body. But Dave, actually, we're not going to play the clip. He said that he doesn't understand why he would bother trying to take over a party, which right now has about 6,600, 6,700 active donors. That's how low it's gone. He said he doesn't see the value in taking something over that's that small. He said he barely saw the value in it when it was 3 times that. Can I tell you, Bill, when it was 3 times that?
It's been a while, right?
Right about the time they did the Reno reset. Here's the numbers. In 2021, these are year-ending numbers. These are the official numbers of membership. They have monthly numbers, but the way they really want to be judged is the December 31st number, okay? And they use this to set delegates for the next convention. They determine what the state allocations are off the numbers at the end of the year. So in 2021, I just told you, let me go back up a second because I don't want to go too fast. 66 or 700 current active people who are donating at the moment. There's actually about 9,000 members, but there's something called life members. And there's, 2,600 or so. I don't know what the exact number is. I'm not good at math, but the idea is that they gave at one point and they're not active now. The people that are active now, about 66, 6,700. This number was trumpeted repeatedly by Evan McMahon, who won chair. This was repeated by Stephen Nicalia, the outgoing chair, who was endorsing Evan McMahon and is now an at-large member of the LNC. They weren't hiding behind this number. It's presented by other people now who are a bit critical, like Dave and his friends in this podcast, as a sign of weakness. Like, look at where they have fallen to. Oh my gosh, they took over and there's nobody left. But here's the true history. In 2021, 17,807. In 2022, 16,578. So they've gone down by 2,300. 2,300. I'm sorry, 1,300. Bad math. They've gone down by 1,300.
We forgive you.
2024, 10,569.
Dropped by 6,000 in a year.
And now it's 8,816, of which about 6,700, 6,600 are active. Okay? So they took over, and he said at 3 times its size, which is where it wasn't really worth it. And now, after we've had the fruit of their activity, this is where they're at. This is how the locusts ate the party. Now, we're going to get into something really heavy right here, the heaviest part of the show, because Dave is going to say something out loud. I like the fact that, unlike his own podcast, he's being interviewed here and being asked a question and trying to explain himself to other human beings present caused him to open his soul and reveal something a little bit here. He reveals the name of the game that the Mises Caucus was playing. And we're going to go to clip C, please, so that you can see this.
Now, who knows what after that? Because, man, there would have been a real crossroads there of like how big that could have gotten and whether I would have had to do a Bobby Kennedy and make an agreement to get something, and then how furious people would have been over me doing that, or whether I would have been able to do that. And I really don't know. I've never been in that situation.
So his eyes go up and to the right, I believe, because I believe his camera's set in reverse, right? It mirrors the image. Am I right about this?
It seems right. Yeah, I'll check it.
But it's the upward look.
He's looking out anyway. He's
This
thinking.
is a place where you begin imagination. You're thinking about what could have been. And other times he looks down because it's history. But he's looking up where he's imagining. And what is he imagining? And in fact, a smile crosses his face when he talks about making the Bobby Kennedy deal. What was the Bobby Kennedy deal? Drop out of your independent candidacy, leave the race, endorse Trump, and get a cabinet seat. And so that, folks, was the name of the play. Drop out. Act one of the play. Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy both come to the Libertarian Party convention, say that you're important to us. We want you to be a part of us. Now, this has an effect, Bill, on the people who want an independent party, who are not pro-Trump. This diminishes their morale, and that's good for the Trump people. On the flip side, for the people who don't want, who love Trump, who are trying to use or position themselves within the Libertarian Party, this boost their morale. And it kind of sets off. There were people who chose not to go because Trump was going to be there. There were people who chose to behave rather rambunctiously because Trump was going to be there. So you can kind of see how this works in the morale game. That's act one of the play. Trump makes a direct appeal to libertarians for their support. But act two is what's revealed here.
Yep.
Rechtenwald, who got the nomination, was supposed to drop out, because even Dave Smith was supposed to do it. And I want to go back to something we covered earlier in the show, because I said, hey, you've done a really good job repenting here and saying that Rechtenwald would have been embarrassed. In fact, I'm glad Chase won because Rechtenwald would have been really bad. Is part of the reason, and I'm asking this with all seriousness, I'm not ascribing any intent, I'm asking this with all due seriousness, is part of the reason that you thought that Rechtenwald was such an embarrassment, that things weren't going to work out, was that he wasn't going to quit? He wasn't going to play the game the role he was supposed to play, that you realized after the fact that this dude was unstable, that he had issues, and that he was going to go ahead anyway and ruin the pro-Trump plan?
This show is brought to you by the Zero Aggression Project. Zap newsletter subscribers get alerts when each episode is released. The Zap website is also the pathway by which you can contact us by email and support the show. This program operates thanks to tax-deductible Zap contributions, and we appreciate your support. So, zap the state, and have a nice day.
So is there anything left for more locusts to eat?
Well, I don't see a heart of repentance about the situation of the Libertarian Party. In fact, if you watch this entire interview, you find that he actually kind of really is like, oh, Libertarian Party? Like, why is this thing even here? Oh, for a moment, we had control of it, and we did great things, which isn't true.
Yeah,
It
nothing
helped
happened.
elect Donald Trump, who is really bad on the issue Dave cares about most. Is he saying, oh, I've learned something from this? I've learned something from my endorsement of Rechtenwald. I've learned something from endorsing Donald Trump. Is he saying he's learned anything from those experiences? No, he's pretty much saying the opposite. In fact, he doubles down. And let's go to clip B, please.
In some ways, I think Justin Amash is almost set up to be that, like, look, dude, like, you guys have this podcast thing, but in real life, and then in real life, Justin finishes like a very distant third in a Senate primary, you know, like, so I'm just not seeing it. Like, what even is the point of going in this direction?
Before I explain who Justin Amash is and what was wrong with what was just said there, do you know what bothers me the most about all of this? Like, if your job is to set up a caucus, if your job is to help Republicans get elected and get attention from libertarians, there's an honest way to do that. There's something out there called the Republican Liberty Caucus. It's never been as big as the Libertarian Party, so they didn't come and try to take that over. They didn't try to build a new version of that. They didn't like do any of that stuff. They came and took something that other people built and now disparage those people for having built it and for having cared about it, that was designed to be a completely separate, independent political party. The strategy that Dave is describing is completely valid. There's a lot of strategies out there to try, and people who are attracted to his strategy should go ahead and try it. But what they did instead was they came and took something that was designed to do something else, and then they sit there and moan about the fact that, oh, these people are such an embarrassment to us. No, they're not. What's interesting here is he focuses on the fact that Justin Amash came in third in a Senate race. That never happened. Okay, let me say that again so that everybody's clear on it. Literally, that never happened. Here's what did happen. Justin Amash was a multi-term congressman who stuck to his guns and faced a moment where he started to lose his donors because he wasn't playing with Trump during the first term. He was holding accountability on a variety of issues that were a little bit inside baseball to most people, having to do with how the House of Representatives runs and the fact that they were voting on these large omnibus bills. I've been the president of Downsize DC. I'm the co-author of the One Subject at a Time Act and the Read the Bills Act. Obviously, I'm a fan of doing the right thing because part of the reason we are in this mess is that they can take stuff that is completely unpopular, that would never ride on its own, and cluster legislation. They can put it inside of something that's sure to pass and that nobody can afford to vote against. And then come election time, if you didn't support it, they can do what they just did to Tom Massey. And Tom Massey's someone they like. Tom Massey is someone they do want to see run for president. Dave Smith's been clear about this. They would be tempted, he even says it in this interview, to come back to the Libertarian Party if Tom Massey was at the front of it. Do you know who Tom Massey's friend is? Do you know that there's actually even a real possibility that if Tom Massey did run for president, that he's going to put Justin Amash on there? These guys are intimate, close friends. These guys share same values. They've been in the trenches beside each other before. And oh, by the way, Justin Amash ends up being the only person in U.S. history that served in the House of Representatives as a libertarian. That gets left out here. Justin Amash, where did he come on third place, which never happened? He ran in the Republican primary for U.S. Senate and came in second. He lost, and it was not close. He ran the best campaign he could, and he lost. He lost to the normal, typical deep state, pro-war, big government Republican, a guy by the name of Rogers, who then himself subsequently lost to a former CIA agent running for the Senate. And she's in now. So Justin Amash didn't come in third. That's not how there was not a general election race where Justin Amash was in third place. Justin Amash lost his primary. Had he won his primary, would things have been different? I don't know. From the get-go, everybody said that the Democrat who did get elected, the CIA agent, was likely to win.
Do you want to talk about Jeremy Kauffman here?
I do. Jeremy Kauffman was kicked out of the convention. Jeremy Kauffman is the chair currently of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, which for years has been posting things that are rife with bigotry and all kinds of ugliness, including anti-Semitism. During the course of the convention, a member of the New Hampshire Libertarian delegation did a Nazi salute while Jeremy Kauffman was on stage insulting the entire audience because rules weren't followed. And he ended up on the stage in the chair debate on the platform of closing and shutting down the party. Jeremy Kauffman used Nazi-coded language while he did this, and we had to sit through and endure it. Not everybody sat through and endured it. There was cacophony while it was happening. I was embarrassed. It was not grace. On either end, it was a bad place personally for me to be. I was miserable by the behavior of all sides at that moment. People were like, well, we had to shout him down because there were film crews there and we needed to show our position. There's other more civil ways to deal with that situation. And they proved they didn't have to because he spoke the next day and running for chair, he gave his speech, which was just almost as bad. It was a complete insult job towards all of us in the hall. It was very rude. But the New Hampshire Libertarian Party has been an embarrassment, and they ended up being disaffiliated after the event was over. Now, there's analysis by Dave Smith in this Liam McCollum interview. There's analysis by Dave Smith in his show, Part of the Problem. Do you know what he doesn't bother to address? Is the most embarrassing moment of the convention, which is Jeremy Kauffman in the chair's debate, which is Jeremy Kauffman speaking from the stage, announcing or giving his pitch for why he should be chair of the Libertarian Party. And Jeremy Kauffman, who ultimately ended up being expelled. Oh, and by the way, the guy that Sieg Heiled, he slapped a woman and got removed. So both of these gentlemen were removed. How much does Dave talk about that? Well, he doesn't. Because you know who's been a guest on Dave Smith's show before?
Let me guess.
More than once? Jeremy Kauffman.
Yeah.
Right? And there's like no enemies to the right. He loves Nick Fuentes. He loves Auburn McIntyre. Like he loves all these people that are on the right. His real problem is people who are actually running for chair of the Libertarian Party. He disparages Evan McMahon, called him a fat gay guy. And just to show you that they don't really love the party, that this is really about hollowing out other people's work to get something easy for themselves. There's the port in any storm argument, because outside of the Libertarian Convention, something happened. There was an article that made it to the New Yorker, and then the Wall Street Journal picked it up and put it on the editorial page, and it fanned wide as we were all arriving in Grand Rapids. Can you please run clip G, which is the conclusion of this segment?
Yeah.
Did you see this Wall Street Journal headline? Yeah, so the Wall Street Journal printed this, how business casual blew up the Libertarian National Convention, a proposal to mandate professional attire, neat facial hair, and closed-toe shoes at this weekend's convention sparked fierce debate. So that's what Justin Amash's party and the haters' party gives us.
Yikes.
Except that's not true either. That's completely not true. First, this was generated by a guy named Ben Weir, who's a member of the Mises Caucus. He basically wrote an open proposal for a bylaw, and he's the one being quoted in the story about the need for these rules that you just heard read. Second, there never was a bylaw proposal about this at the convention. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. We didn't vote on it. And third, there was no discussion about it in the halls whatsoever. I'm not saying that nobody was aware of the Wall Street Journal article having happened, but nobody was debating this question. Nobody really cared that was there. It wasn't happening. It wasn't brought by Justin Amash, who was there and never said anything about it. But on top of all of that, Ben Weir himself wasn't in the building. He wasn't there. So if someone wishes they weren't a libertarian, Bill, then maybe, just maybe, we should say, you know what? That's quite all right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.